Hi Ron, and today we'll talk about best meta builds for both Naoe and Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows. And let's start with Naoe. Naoe is already a very strong stealth fighter, so we need to focus on both boosting her stealth abilities even further, but also on different direct approaches, because there will be some moments in the main storyline and in different side quests and in different moments of the game where you will need to fight enemies with in a direct approach. So we need to make a hybrid build that will cover all the aspects, but for some of you who want to push your stealth abilities even further and to concentrate only on stealth, there will be some variations of the build only for stealth players. So first we're using Masked Zeus Legendary Katana that's giving us posture attack remains charged after dodge, helps our posture attacks remains after dodge. And why this particular katana? Because it has one of the highest stats in the game, but also posture attacks are the strongest attacks in the game. And Naoe is not a very tanky character, so you will dodge quite a lot. Dodge is one of your most used and most useful tools to stay alive. So to keep your posture attacks, because by default you are losing posture attacks after dodge, to keep them after dodge we are using Masked Death Legendary Katana. And our enchantment will be plus 25 damage with combo. And with our skills, we are doing quite a lot of damage with our combos, and we're increasing our damage with combo and even further. Also, we're using legendary Kusarigama because Tanto is more stealth weapon, and it's not the easiest weapon. And we're trying to make build that will cover everything with less efforts to put into it. So we're using Kusarigama demon tools that will increase our damage with stealth attack by 2 health segments. So 2 health segments additionally will be removed with this Kusarigama on Rush Assassinate. And we will also put enchantments plus 20% armor damage to when we need to this Kusarigama, to the situations when we need to fight when we need to fight in the direct fight with a lot of enemies. It will be very useful to load down the armor of different, especially heavy tanky enemies. And the best sets we will be using will be no master stroke sets. We will use both mask and costume, because mask giving us 20% of adrenaline clunk on affliction build up, and we're building up our afflictions, especially when you are using our tools, especially kunais, and enchantment will be on mask plus 3% critical chance. Not that great, you may think at first glance, but still its additional critical chance will crit in almost every single RPG, and in Assassin's Creed series also in the latest games crit chance is very good. So crit chance will never be something. Crit chance is something that you will always want on all your characters, especially in RPGs and action RPGs. Another will on our costume, no master stroke costume, we will use 20% additional armor damage to load down armor on our enemies even faster. And why we're using no set, because no master stroke costume, because its main perk is spreading affliction build up on afflicted enemy kills. Also very strong. Affliction is a very strong status effect, and it helps you to kill enemies and to finish enemies much faster. Now I will be just a killing machine, especially in situations when you need to approach enemies in a direct combat. And we're using as our trinket Akubi's Laughter Trinket, and it will increase our vulnerability damage by 1% per mastery point in assassin skill tree. We'll talk about skill trees a little bit later. And another armor piercing, this time not armor damage but armor piercing plus 20% enchantment to be able to pierce enemies armor and do additional damage even through the armor. So what are the other alternatives you can use in this build? Other alternatives, if we're talking about katanas, will be Eye of the Dragon. That will increase our damage when facing a single enemy plus 35%. And this is why we're using again plus 20% armor damage to low enemies armor much faster. Really good when you're fighting tanky enemies or bosses. It's one of the best katanas in the game. By the way, if you're wondering how to get this katana completely for free, I've made a complete guide how anime Animus works in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Look at how it's working, how different challenges works, how different Animus projects work, and you will see how to get all the premium items completely for free, simply for just doing very easy and very fast contracts projects, and how to unlock modern day storyline and lore. Another very useful katana you can use is, of course, Dragon's Edge, that creates an area of effect on hits with dodge attacks. Also very strong katana that helps you to fight multiple enemies, especially with multiple enemies. You will dodge quite a lot. It will help you to create very big amounts of damage in area of effect, in different areas of effect, and we will use 25% damage with combo on this katana. Another good katana, also you can get it from Animus challenges, Carved Bone Katana, giving you plus 100% critical chance after not attacking for 5 seconds. Also good when you can, for example, stay a while for some time to when you, for example, alarmed your enemies, and when you're escaping your enemies and enemies lost your sight, you can keep fighting, keep damaging your enemies with additional crit, 100% crit chance, also very strong. And the enchantments we are using will be 25% damage with combo. And again, another strong katana, I can say that it's in top 3 katanas in the game for now. It's of course Violet Knight you get from different side activities. If I remember correctly, I've got this katana from fighting yokais and looking for yokais. And why this particular katana? Because it's helping you to build up different afflictions and trigger poison on deflecting enemies. Very strong. It's extremely strong, and simply just melting all the enemies around. Just try this katana, you will love it. And enchantments will be, of course, 25% again damage with combo enter. And when we're talking about kusarigamas alternatives you can use will be stone hearts that spread poison affliction, build up with combo enter, and enchantments here will be 20% armor damage. And Aikyo kusarigama that when pressing light attacks or heavy attacks after you dodge will trigger a quick strike. Also very strong, doing additional quite a lot of damage. And enchantment will be armor, and again armor damage to low armor on enemies much faster. Especially on kusarigamas, it's one of the must-have enchantments to low down the armor, especially when you're using your whirlwind attacks. We'll talk about skills a little bit later. Another strong kusarigama will be Kain kusarigama, that's increasing your damage by 135% when surrounded by two or more enemies. Also very good, again, with whirlwinds and when you're fighting a lot of enemies in one fight. And again, armor damage, because quite a lot of enemies, especially in the end game, later in the game, will be armored and tanky. Another good kusarigama will be Death Bloom, that increase impact on alternate attacks, but it requires some more skills. So if you are not using alternative attacks, it will be useless for you. But if you like, and if you mastered the alternative attacks, it will just shine in your hands. And again, 20% armor damage enchantment. And here it is, all the kusarigamas. In terms of our sets, it's pretty the best set you can use. No master stroke mask for this particular play style. We'll talk about different play styles a little bit later. But with our trinkets, you can use not only Akubi's Laughter, but also you can swap to, for example, Tatsui's Triumph, that will increase tool damage per mastery points plus 2% in tools, and with armor piercing enchantment here. If you love to use tools, if you're using tools quite a lot, you can swap to these trinkets, and yes, you will use your vulnerability damage per mastery points in Assassin's skill tree, but you will do much more damage with tools if you like stealth approach and if you like fighting enemies from the distance. And another will be also very good Trinket Dragon Tools. Again, you can get it from Animus projects. You can again check my guide. I've described everything, how to do this in the most efficient way, and how to, in general, how Animus works, how all the projects works. Again, nothing difficult. They're very fast and very easy. Dragon Tools increasing your critical chance on next hit after a finisher and giving you quite a lot of damage, but you need to make finishers, so you need to fight several enemies in a row to proc this wonderful trinket. And enchantments here will be also 20% armor piercing. So here it is, all the all the trinkets you can use. Another quite a good trinket you can use in this build, but probably less effective because we're already building quite a lot of adrenaline. Flight of the Ubagami, it will give you 1% adrenaline gain per mastery point in Kusarigama, and here enchantments will be also 20% armor piercing, but if you want to use your skills even more often, but playing this build, I feel like my skills already getting back quite fast. So it just if you want to spam your skills even faster, but it's already getting back quite fast enough. So it's not a great need in this particular trinket. So it's still one of the best trinkets in the game. So again, you can swap if you want to spam your skills even faster. But even in this current build with your current trinkets with Arquebus Laughter, you are doing quite a lot of damage and getting the skills quite often. So you don't even need skills such often. Another version of the build you can use is again Mazda's Katana with Ike's Kusarigama, but this time your set will be Typhon Dragon headpiece. Again, you can get all these 3 items and this Kusarigama from Animus Projects. Again, check my guide to see how to do this and how to farm all these items. Typhon Dragon headpiece will stagger all nearby enemies on weak point attacks, and again critical chance enchantments, and tropes of the enraged will help you to vanish after 2 seconds while crouched on prone. Again, very strong armor piece that will help you to play. It's also hybrid set, it will have hybrid build that will help you to play both in direct approaches and in stealth. But if you want to play stealthy more often than indirect with indirect fights, you can swap to this particular build to be able to vanish whenever you want. Simply just crouch or prone for 2 seconds to vanish away from the enemies and to lose their attention. Armor, of course, armor damage 20%, another armor damage enchantments. And Hatsu Dragon Orb that will increase damage with combo enders on vulnerable enemies plus 50%, and armor prison again enchantments. Another version of this build will be with the Cerulean Guise set. It will be 3 items in this set: hood, Kasore, and trinket. And this set, why it's so good, it's giving you 3 wonderful bonuses: undetectable when dodging out of a stalking zone, tag enemies on sight with eagle vision, and health 2+2 health segments removed on running assassinate. Also really good sets that will help you to stay in stealth much longer. You can also swap to another really good set, Master Assassin sets you will get after completing the main storyline with again Akubi's Laughter trinkets. And with these sets, first hoods will give you very strong passive ground attacks, now remove 2 health segments on hit, and gear armor piece will give you another very strong bonus, 2 health segments removed on assassination. So it will push your stealth playstyle even further and will make Naoe almost almost undetectable, and it will kill all the enemies almost with almost every enemy will die from 1 shot. And again, critical chance and armor damage past enchantments on our armor. Akubi's Laughter, as always, plus 20% armor piercing for the situations where you need to play, where you need to fight with your enemies in direct approach. And again, Demon Tools and Masked Death with damage with combo end on Katana enchantments and armor damage on our Kusarigama enchantments. When we are talking about Yasuke, on Yasuke there are several also very strong builds that you can play. First build will be with long katana and bow. And long katana will be Miss Slayer that will increase our that will help with our combat enders. All the combat enders are postured and make enemies vulnerable. One of the strongest katanas in the game that's literally just melting all the enemies around and helps Yasuke, who is already a quite tanky character with tons of damage, will help to simply just slay all your enemies with several hits on any difficulty, especially with the whole build, with the synergy of everything. and here will be armor piercing enchantment. Second weapon will be in the first variation of the build will be bow. We will use funeral pyre that will help us with retrieving shot, push it to push enemies back, so you will be able to finish enemies laying on the ground. Also very strong bow, one of the strongest bow in the game. And why we're using bow? Because bow helps you to stay undetected for bigger amounts of time. With bow, almost if you are not leaving bodies behind, with bow enemies almost won't detect you, so you will be able even play stealth with Yasuke. Another set we'll be using will be extravagant Kabukimona headgear that will automatically perform a weak point attack on a successful parry, and with 25% armor piercing with melee weapon, because almost all the time mostly we will play with our long katana, so it's mostly melee builds, but for some situations we will of course use our bow. And our outfit will be extravagant Kabukimona outfit. This will increase, give us 100% of an adrenaline chunk with weak point attack, again to use our skills even faster, because Yasuke is doing extremely big amounts of damage with his skills. And we will restore 8% health after using abilities, because again we're getting our adrenaline back on weak point attacks, and we are making this chain of damaging enemies, restoring adrenaline, and with the same time restoring our health. Yasuke is already a tanky character, but will push his tankiness even further. And our trinket amulet will be Dragon Tooth. Again, you can get it from Animus Project. You will increase 100% critical chance on next hit after a finisher. Yasuke is quite tanky character, so you can simply just aggro all your enemies on yourself and simply fight crowds with no problems at all. So we will use these trinkets with adrenaline gain 20% additional to be able to get our skills even faster and to spam our skills all the time. Alternatives you can use on Yasuke will be, first we'll talk about long katanas. Alternatives will be first Cerulean Guise, also katana from long katana from Animus Project, that will increase 100, giving us 100% of adrenaline chunk on ration use, but no health regain. So also really good katana, but it's giving you a choice what you want. How it's just katanas for the ones who think that they can survive. If you think that you can survive almost everything, if you think that tankiness of Yasuke is quite enough for you, if you are sure that you can slay all your enemies with several hits, use this katana also will be quite strong to get your skills even faster and to increase your skills almost immediately. But do remember that you will get no health regains from using rations. So you will need to remember that you restore your health only by yourself by using Kabukimona set, and do not restore your health with rations. So if you are really sure in your skills, definitely do use this katana, long katana, to get your skills even faster. Another really good two katanas you can use: Claw of the Tide, katana that instantly charge posture attacks on hits with a posture attack, armor piercing 20% enchantment. And another katana also really strong will be Loyal Traveler, that giving us a bonus of sheathed attacks, postured, and make enemies also vulnerable. Also works wonderful with these builds, with all the vulnerability bonuses we are getting, especially with our weak spots, weak point attacks sets we are using. In terms of bows, another alternatives you can use will be Falcon's Eye, that fire multiple arrows in a single shot, because we've got quite a lot of ammo on our bows. Maxed upgraded bow has 40 arrows in a cure, so you can use this bow to do quite a lot of damage, but do remember that your arrows will end much faster. And with enchantments plus 25% damage when hitting vulnerable enemies. And another really good bow will be, there are not much bows for our particular build, still there are tons of really good armor, different really good and extremely strong armor and weapon pieces in the game, but for our build only two left, alternative 1000 cuts that helps us with shots to legs, knock down enemies, again with 25% damage when hitting vulnerable enemies. If you are sure that you can hit enemies' legs. And another will be Heart Splitter, that charge helps you with charge attacks. Automatically helps all your charge arrows automatically become poacher shots. That also will increase your damage quite a lot, giving you, and also with enchantments, plus 25% damage when hitting vulnerable enemies also will give you quite a lot of damage, like a total outcome. Another version of the second version of the build will be with Naginata and Teppo. It will be less stealth build, more direct approach build. And Yasuke, with the direct approach, Yasuke is, in general, it's a character with whom you will either tank a lot or aggro a lot of enemies, crowds on yourself, and to finish them with different AoE attacks, or just simply just fighting them, again, with a big crowds, with a big amount of different enemies. So Naginata is very good, especially when you are gap closing with big amounts of enemies, and Time Honored Crescent Naginata will be the best in this build, because First Strike makes enemies vulnerable every 8 seconds. So every 8 seconds you will make enemies, almost all the enemies, vulnerable. Again, in addition with weak points attacks with our Kabukimona, our extravagant Kabukimona outfit and headgear we are using in this particular build. Again, we are using the same armor but different weapons. It will be extremely strong with, again, 20% armor piercing enchantment. And Teppo, first best Teppo we can use in this build will be Dark Burst Teppo. You will get it from helping Yasuke's mentor, who's been training Yasuke for quite a lot, helping his mentor to find his mentors other students. And helping different students, one of the students will reward you with this wonderful Teppo that will increase, that will shot multiple bullets in a single shot. And yes, Teppo has not that big amount of ammo, but trust me, it's worth it, because this Teppo, it's slowing down your ammo quite fast, but it's doing so much damage. And because of our build, not mostly ranged but mostly melee, it helps you just to start combat, to one-shot several enemies if you are shooting heads, with additional 24% damage when hitting vulnerable enemies, and to just close your gap, to close the distance between you and your enemies, to finish them if they're not finished already with your skills and with your Teppo, to finish them with your Naginata that doing quite, again, a lot of damage. So this pair, this combination of these two weapons doing big amounts of damage when you start combat, and also finishing all the enemies very fast with your skills, and with all the synergy of different aspects of our armor, our trinkets, and our main weapons that will be Naginata in this particular version of the build. Another very good weapons you can use will be Cerulean Nexus, again from Animus Projects. So it will increase impact on shoulder tackle. Shoulder tackle is a very strong skill, some sort of active skill, but do remember you can use shoulder tackle not only to destroy walls and gates, but also to knock down your enemies. Also use it against your enemies with additional 20% armor piercing bonus. And another very good Naginata will be Lengthen Horizon, that will instantly charge posture attacks when pressing light attack or heavy attack on hits. And if I remember correctly, it's all Naginatas you can use in this particular build. But when we're talking about Teppos, if you haven't yet got this particular Teppo, you can use Repeating Fade, that will increase damage per meter of distance by 5%, and will also with 25% damage when hitting vulnerable enemies enchantments. And it's all the Teppos you can use in this build. But if you are playing Yasuke and if you don't feel like you are tanky enough, you can use again either Mist Slayer with Funeral Pyre, or for example Claw of the Tides. And if you are not feeling tanky, again, if you're fighting tough tanky enemies and quite a lot of enemies, you can swap Extravagant Kabukimona set to, for example, legendary samurai, legendary sets that will give you heal increase, critical chance by 15% for 5 seconds, with armor piercing with melee weapon 25% enchantment, and armor of the legendary samurai is also heal over time after 10 seconds, but will load down your effective rations by 50%. With armor damage, 20% armor damage enchantment, and again dragon tooth. Or the last variant, if you feel that you don't need that much of tankiness, but you want to make Yasuke more tanky, but still keep him quite agile, and to help him to dance between enemies. You can use Defense Master, Head Wrap, and Defense Master Close, and that will slow down time after a successful dodge and restore 10% health on next hit after a parry, again with armor piercing with melee weapon and armor damage enchantments on our Head Wrap and Closing. And again with Dragon Tools, Funeral Pyre, and Claw of the Tides, or Miss Slayer Long Katana. If we're talking about our skills, first we'll talk about Naoe. We're using again Katana and Kusarigama, and on Katana you need all the skills, you need to learn all the skills, and you've got quite a lot of skill points to learn completely everything. Because when you are unlocking new skills, even if you do not use skills, you will increase your Katana passive Katana mastery. That will increase your Katana damage by in total 80%. So it's giving you quite extremely big amount of damage when you are getting all the skills unlocked. So main skills we will use on our Katana will be first Tidal Wave, that's helping you to kill multiple enemies and giving quite a lot of damage and make enemies vulnerable. And second, our skill will be to finish your most toughest enemies, will be Eviscerate, that strike an enemy dealing 150% ability damage and pushing them away, and half S effect on large enemies, still very effective on regular enemies. On our Kusarigama, I already told you that Kusarigama is very good when you're fighting crowds. So on Kusarigama, again, you will need all skills to unlock Kusarigama Mastery Passive and increase your damage by 80% in total. But our main skills will be, first skill will be Federal Outburst, that will launch now towards a single enemy and unleash a flurry of 4 strikes, dealing 40% ability damage each. So it will do quite a lot of damage with Kusarigama per one target. And second skill we will be using will be Cyclone Blast, that will help you to again slay the crowds. Like I already told you, it's AoE skill that swings the Kusarigama in large circles around Naoe, dealing 16% ability damage per one hit and pushing back struck enemies, and it's doing quite a big amount of hits. We're not using Tanto, but if you want to use Tanto, you can use it just 2 skills in Tanto, so it's not it's quite obvious what you will be using: Hidden Hands and Shadow Piercer. And by the way, if you want to use Tantos, there are several Tantos you can use, very strong Tantos, and Tantos that I highly suggest you to use if you want to use them will be Egan Sunset, slow down time on escape strike, 20% armor damage, or Cerulean Flux, again from Animus Projects, instantly charge posture attacks after using abilities with armor piercing enchantments. Or another really good tool, even 3 Tantos will be Shinobi's for Fury. Weak points attacks make enemies vulnerable after second time, plus 20% armor piercing, and Yukimitsu Revenge afflicts enemies are vulnerable and plus 20% armor piercing. Or for example, Scarlet Fate, increased impact with all attacks and 20% additional armor piercing enchantments. If you want to use Tento in any builds, but better to use Tento if you want to use Tento in the third build and in the fourth build with either Master Assassin set or with Cerulean Guise and Cerulean Guise Cassode and Cerulean Guise Hood and trinkets. But in our main builds, hybrid builds, you don't need to use Tense. We're using Kusarigama and Katana in our main build. And in tools, again, you need all the skills, both with Shinobi, and one of the best skills that we'll be using from our Shinobi skill tree will be lightning kicks that knock down two closed enemies and deal 30% ability damage to each, both doing very great damage, but also helps you to escape if you are surrounded, especially if you, because Naoe is not that tanky like Yasuke, and sometimes you will need to run away from your enemies. It will help you to, especially when you've killed some enemies, high target enemies, and finished the quest, and you need to escape from this place, from these especially castles, because in castles there are quite lots of enemies, especially samurais and different enemies with steppos and bows. It will help you to escape much faster. And again, in assassin skill tree, you will need all the skills. When we're talking about Yasuke, for two main weapons we're using will be long katana, and first skill will be power dash. This will dash to a single enemy dealing 100% ability damage, then move behind them to make them vulnerable. If enemy is dead, Yasuke will move to another enemy. Also very strong skill that will help you to push vulnerability on your enemies even further. And second will be payback that will deal 3 powerful strikes to a single enemy, each dealing 70% ability damage and restoring 10% health to keep our tankiness even further, because we are not using in our main builds on Yasuke a lot of things to restore our health. So it will be quite useful, especially if you are swapping to the weapons that will and armor that will swap your rations from restoring your health to restoring your adrenaline level. So again, very strong ability, especially when you need to fight with tanky high value targets and with bosses. In Naginata, we are using Crescent Strike that helps you to jump to enemies with which you will jump to enemy and swing the Naginata in a large arc in front of you, dealing 80% ability damage and pushing them back. Again, Naginata is a very AoE AoE concentrated AoE centered weapon that will help you to simply just wipe crowds in several hits. And second will be onslaught that will unleash a flurry of 8 strikes on a single enemy, dealing 50% ability damage, each and half is effective on large enemies. Still very good when you are fighting bosses and when we are fighting high value targets or samurais, especially when you are looking for and trying to get new legendary gears when you're fighting and making your way through the castles. We're not using Kanabo. Kanabo is a very good weapon, but not for our builds because it's too slow. It's doing quite a lot of damage, but it's quite slow, and you need to focus on more tanky builds with Kanabo because it's not very easy weapon with which you can dodge all the attacks. Sometimes you can miss attacks, so it requires some other builds. But with Teppo and our bow, we will, especially with Teppo, we will be using, by the way, Teppo is one of the strongest weapons in the game, especially Teppo that's doing 2 shots in one row. So in Teppo, we will be using Armor Buster first abilities with reload the Teppo and follow up with a shot that deals 100% ability damage and breaks the target's armor. One of the strongest ability for Yasuke in the game, especially with our Teppo that doing double damage with one shot. So it's literally will almost wipe all the enemies with one single skill. Especially when you are fighting high target enemies, try to use this skill first, especially when you are closing the distance, and choose the most powerful, the most tanky enemy to wipe it with one single shot. And second skill we will be using will be Explosive Sunrise that will throw a gunpowder pouch and automatically shoot it to create an explosion that deals 70% ability damage. Really good skill to again close your distance, but when you are just starting a fight with several enemies, especially low tier, not very tanky enemies, to wipe them in one single shot. Also very strong skill that will do 2 shots, especially when you've got second upgrades of the explosive warfare Teppo passive. And about our bow is, as you remember, it's the best stealth weapon for Yasuke, especially ranged, because Teppo is more direct approach weapon and bow is more stealth approach weapon. both Teppo and Bow doing quite a lot of damage, especially fully upgraded with its Mastery passive. And with both, we're using first Staggering Blast that shoots a powerful arrow at the target, dealing 120% ability damage and pushing them back. And second skill will be Retreating Shot that shot 4 arrows at the closest enemy, dealing 20% ability damage each time, while evading incoming attacks. Also really strong skill that will additionally with our bow doing quite a lot of extremely big amounts of damage, especially fully mastered with all the passives. And about our mastery, what we're using in our on the highest knowledge rank, what skills you will need to use, what mastery passives you will need to unlock, and in which order. You will have quite a lot of experience in the game and in exploring the world to unlock everything, but what's more important, first we'll talk about Naoe. Naoe needs damage with posture attacks because the posture attacks are the strongest attacks. It really are the strongest attacks in the game. First, second, we will need to unlock in the first row armor damage because there are quite a lot of, especially when you are raiding castles or later in the game and in the end game, there are quite a lot of armored enemies. And the last thing you will need will be damage on vulnerable enemies. This will increase damage when hitting vulnerable enemies plus 30%. After that, you will need to unlock damage with affliction, increasing damage with affliction by 40% because now it's very easy to spam affliction on your enemies and to spread affliction on your enemies with now, especially with the katana from with our katana that we are getting from fighting yokais while at night. And next thing we will be using will be next thing you will need to unlock will be headshot damage, but it's not mandatory when you are using your kunais and other tools. It's quite helpful because in total increases your headshot damage plus by plus 30%. But again, it's not something mandatory because your tools is also doing quite a lot of damage, but still it's a very strong bonus. In the second row, you will need to use first unlock melee weapon damage plus 30%. Next one will be damage with tools because tools they're very useful still. Third one will be, or you can first unlock armor piercing or after that unlock damage with tools. It doesn't matter, they are both very useful. Will be armor piercing plus 30% passive, and after that you will need to increase critical damage by 60% and damage with abilities because abilities is always there doing quite a lot of damage. Or you can first unlock damage with abilities and after that unlock critical damage. Again, it doesn't matter that much, but do remember that abilities doing quite a lot of damage, so you might want to get your abilities damage first on now and after that increase your critical damage. Still, critical damage is also doing quite a lot of damage and it helps you quite a lot. Next thing in the third row you will need to unlock is of course damage plus 20% global passive because Naoe is more damaging character and less tanky, so damage is the most important on our character, and damage here is the main your aspect for survivability. And after that will be cooldown that will increase your low down your cooldown on abilities by 20%. Next one will be of course health that increase maximum health by 24%, especially for your hybrid builds for first and second combinations of our builds. But if you are playing stealth build, you don't need health passive and you will need to increase your adrenaline by 50% adrenaline gain to direct approaches with the stealth build and critical chance by 4% with the critical chance global passive. When we're talking about Yasuke, on Yasuke you will need first damage with posture attack and damage with headshots because we're using Teppo and bow, so you will need quite a lot damage and headshot damage. 30% additional headshot damage is quite a lot on Yasuke, especially with our 2 bullets per 1 Teppo. It will do simply just not only knockdown but simply just one-shot enemies with single one shot, and armor damage because we will fight samurais quite a lot. We don't need damage with afflictions in our build at all, but again, if you're using different types of ammo, I'm using either armor piercing or regular ammo, and on bow also either stealth arrows or just regular arrows. But if you want to use different arrows, different bullets on our Teppo, you can use this passive too. And you will need damage on vulnerable enemies because again vulnerability and weak point damage are the main are one of them our strongest and biggest damage outcomes in our build. In the second row we will need damage with melee weapon and damage with ranged weapon and armor piercing, damage with ability and critical damage in this particular order. Critical damage will be the last. It's very important, but more important for us to get damage with our particular weapons with melee and ranged weapon and armor piercing and damage with abilities, because our abilities, you remember, it's not only wiping crowds but also doing quite a lot of damage for both single targets and AoE damage. And the third row you will need damage, cooldown, health. Not if you are sure you can survive almost everything, you can put health on the last in the last spot in your queue of learning skills in the third row. But if you don't feel that you are tanky enough, you can learn health right after increasing your damage and cooldown of your skills, because your skills helping you again wiping everything, and damage is your main survivability aspect in the game, main key to survive everything. But health on Yasuke also might work if you're not feeling that you are tanky enough. And adrenaline again to get your skills much faster, and critical chance to increase your critical chance even further and to crit even faster with additional critical damage you got from critical damage global passive. So here it is, guys. You don't need to use even more stealth, especially playing Naoe. You don't need even to play stealth versions of the builds, because third and fourth versions of the builds, because even in the hybrid builds with all the passives and all the skills, Naoe is a very stealthy character, and she already has enough tools to be stealth enough and to be undetected in almost every single situation in the game. But you can always add some additional tools to be even more stealthy. We've already been talking about which tools, but with these both builds you will be both unkillable and deadly in all the situations in the game, and you will wipe all the enemies with just several hits and several attacks. So thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to click like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Also check out different guides, builds on Assassin's Creed series, Elder Scrolls Online, The Division 2, Horizon Forbidden West, Ghost of Tsushima. Check out other different guides and builds on different titles. Check out different playlists. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Good luck.